Hello, and welcome to another episode of Processing with Sam and Malik, a weekly take on life through the lens of husbands, fathers, believers, and of course, Philly sports fans. As always, this episode is brought to you by Sam's Community TV, creating content to establish a community through real, genuine relationship building. And before we start tonight's episode, I want to please ask that you hit the subscribe button and the notification button. And if you enjoyed this episode, we would like you to hit the like button so that you can go ahead and help out the good old algorithm. That's right. We got to get the buttons out of the way here.
Get all of them.
So Malik, how we doing, man? How was the week?
Week was good. I've got since I think we last spoke, I have an 11-year-old now. So he is a full year older since we last spoke, or his birthday was just last week.
Get out of here.
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy. I guess my hairline suggests that he is that age. So there's that. We got out of town for a few days to let the boys run around outside and do the beach thing. We're a little bit warmer down here. And then, school, and my son decided that he wanted to be an actor. He has got his first domestic theater performance. He was in Where the Wild Things Are. So it's been a busy week, man.
Oh,
I didn't tell anybody else otherwise.
That's awesome.
How about you?
I guess the reason I was so shocked, stunned, wowed, amazed at the news of your son's birthday.
Uh-oh. I lost you for a second. Ladies and gentlemen, I must have put Sam to sleep. Yes, we gotta pay this audio, man. Come on, we gotta pay these bills, Sam. Oh no. I guess we'll wait and hang out for him until he gets back.
All right. Sorry about that, folks.
Quick
But while I get things together,
I feel like you've got way too much high-tech stuff going on over there. Like you got the HD cams.
Here we go.
You got the boom mic going. You got the Dolby surround.
Here we go. I think the rule of thumb is don't touch anything.
It's usually the case.
That's also the lesson I learned as we go along. Don't touch anything.
That's usually the case.
But I was just trying to adjust my volume just a bit. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So interestingly enough, my son turned 4 over the weekend. So I think there's people that in between episodes, our children aged an entire year in just 1 week.
it's the miracle of television or podcasting or whatever.
The cool thing is yesterday they were kind of running into the room, in our family room, and I looked at my wife and I told her, I said, they're getting older. Sometimes you just look at them, you can tell they're not the same. And I just had one of those moments this weekend. I just looked at them both together and I said, okay, those two people right there, that's not what I'm used to seeing run through the door.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, and not to preview anything, that there are going to be, not that we're similar age, our kids are not so far apart, but it is going to be strange that as they get older and you start to have more adult-like experiences, conversations, rational decisions, that you realize that there is absolutely a point, even though I may not treat you like a child anymore or immediately see you as a child, you are very clearly still a child. And I react to things as though you are still my child. So there's that part of the conversation.
Yeah. No,
I need a blanket right now. Golly, I'm already in my feelings.
Speaking about already being, how about the fact that we're already at the start of opening week?
Yeah, man.
Is that right?
Let's go Thursday. Phil's Braves.
So what do we got? What are we thinking?
We definitely don't have Dollar Dog Day anymore. We definitely don't have that. But I think there's reason to be excited. The division is always going to come down to the Phillies and Braves. The Mets can do whatever they want and they can pay for whoever they want, but they've been wildly inconsistent. new manager aside. It's going to be Phillies Braves. It's going to be about pitching. It's going to be about who's going to be able to perform for 162 consistently. And then once you do that, it's going to be, can you beat the Dodgers? Can you beat the Braves? Can you beat the Phillies in the postseason? That's what it's going to come down to. So I'm excited. The Phillies are like the team that is kind of pressing. They're beyond the Sixers because they've gotten to the World Series. But now we're at the point of like, we've seen this already. So now we need a new mark. We need a new high water. And what is that? And we're probably at the point right now where it's fair to consider that with the payroll that they've got, the guys that they've added, that we're expecting something greater than, you've got to break through at some point. And this might be the year. Who knows?
So let me ask you this. Do you think they'll get any, what's the word I'm looking for? You said, okay, here's what could be different. What could be different is the regular season for the Phillies, right? Like maybe that's was it a pennant? Not a pennant, a division.
Yeah.
Crown, right? So like maybe that is the one feather that could be different in terms of what this team does, because the Braves generally run away with it in the regular season, but then it comes down to the postseason, and that's when the Phillies are always live. So I guess the question becomes: do you want to be one of those teams that's just always live in the postseason, or a dominant Braves type team in the regular season as well? And from a fan perspective, maybe we'll just take the team that if they get in, we expect them to get in, and to be live, as opposed to the team that is showing, is sort of leading the pack throughout the year.
I would prefer to avoid the wild card. I don't think the Phillies are scared, and ultimately, I don't think it matters for them. But I would prefer that they avoid the wild card. The Dodgers added a small nation of people, including Shohei, who may or may not be suspended or may not be gambling. We have no idea what's going on over there. So it's possible that the Braves step back, and the number one team in the East is going to be in the NL. Is going to be the Dodgers, and I don't necessarily know that I want to see them. But the Phillies aren't going to be afraid. The problem is that if you get into the wild card, you are entirely reliant on Wheeler and Nola, which isn't bad, but they've got to be exceptional every single time. And how many times do you want to trust it to be every single time? Right? I think the Phillies with Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, who knows what Sanchez is going to look like. You're probably going to get not a whole lot from Taijuan Walker. So at that point in time, it's like, well, we're going to hope that we're going to be able to get through with our top three, and that you've got a Trey Turner that we saw at the latter half, then the beginning half of the season. Now you have him for the full year. So if we get that guy, they'll probably make up the difference between losing a Rhys Hoskins and whatever you might get of an inconsistent Castellanos and Schwarber hitting 190 with 45 home runs. And then Harper's going to be out for 40 games at some point in time. So who knows what we get with Rojas. So there's questions. The bullpen doesn't have a declared closer. They've got a lot of live arms. I would love to see, and I know that the Phillies will, because that's been their MO, go out during the trade deadline. We're already months out. I'm already talking about trade deadline. They'll go get a team.
That's part of the process of being live in the postseason.
Yeah.
The team that participates in the trade deadline to, again, just sort of plug in the small areas where you feel there's a small deficiency, or a matchup situation that you're anticipating in the future. We realize, hey, more than likely we're gonna have to go through this, and I need this arm for this bat, sort of deal. I'm it's interesting about the wild card for the Phils, because I kind of think they perform well in the wild card. Listen, it's funny, especially playing the Braves, talking about opening week, because that's the one team that they hate the fact that they have to deal with us off of the wild card. It's like, and it's almost like they look at it as an unfair advantage to them. So I think it's interesting how the losing team now has a very different perspective in terms of what the wild card offers any team that's in the postseason.
That's right.
From my perspective, hey, so far so good in the wild card with this group.
I think the Phillies expect to be in the postseason, and I think they should expect to be in the postseason.
See, I look at it differently than the Sixers in the play-in. I want the Sixers to avoid the play-in, because the matchups at the top of the East, I think, are creating a different a different barrier, in my
Yeah.
opinion, than the Phillies. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter who the Phillies then face. They just have to be in my
Get
opinion.
in.
Like that's kind of how I look at this group. Like just put them in the dance and they're
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And like I said, when you've got a Wheeler, Nola, and then Suarez, let's go play ball because
Right.
those three guys have a chance to go out there and roll a one run, 6 inning, and then we get to the bullpen and we see what happens.
Let me ask you something. Do you think Suarez gets more time this year? Like,
I think
or
Suarez. This
innings?
is so he has been in the past 2 spring trainings. He has been injured. He has had problems getting in and out of Venezuela, and for all intents and purposes, has been relatively quiet. Everything that I've seen and it's been reported has been about him playing and feeling well coming out of Florida. So he's going to break camp probably in the best shape that he's been, and he's integral because the Phillies have pitched him in closeout situations, and he's performed well. And I honestly don't have any reservation. I would love Wheeler in that game in that moment, or Nola to a degree, but I don't have any reservation saying let's throw out Suarez and see what you got. That dude does not sweat. He doesn't.
He doesn't. Yeah, I mean he doesn't. He really doesn't. He's calm, cool, collected. It's amazing when I hear about his defensive statistics as a pitcher. He like ranks tops in major leagues in terms of his defensive rankings. And there's nothing about him that wows you at all physically.
Yeah.
And even in terms of apparent effort, it's so effortless, which means that there's this natural instinctual component to his play that's like, this guy's a guy. You know what I mean?
You may not remember. I don't know if you remember when there was a ball that was hit at Cliff Lee. I think it was in the postseason. And he literally just like flipped his glove. The ball was smoked at him. And he just was like,
before he threw it over to first?
He just was chilling. And it was like
flipping it, catching the glove, flipping it to the hand.
Yeah, it was nothing. It was like, yo, you completely ignored the fact that you're in a big moment and that ball was roped at you. Suarez has got a little bit of him that in him.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does, man. I'm excited to see the season. And I am more than confident the Phillies are probably in a position right now where if they are close, kind of as the season moves forward, they've got arms in the minor league system that they probably would be willing to move if that's going to warrant a bat or a relief pitcher that could get them over the hump. That's it. So they've got guys. They've definitely got Abel and Painter and McGarry. Like they've got guys who they probably will rely on to keep costs down in the future. But they may look at them as this is an insurance policy. Should we need to go out and get some kind of outfielder because Rojas doesn't hit or because Harper's not, producing the way he does because of first base, we need to go get somebody to help him. They're going to do something there. They have chances to do something.
What time is opening game?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Either way, I probably will be looking at that and not at my laptop for work that day. As any good fan should. It's opening day. Honestly, opening day should be, if we talk about patriotism in this country, it honestly should be a holiday.
Let's talk about it.
Right? Like we out here trying to, red, white, and blue it up all the time. It should be the day after the Super Bowl or opening day for baseball. Straight up holiday.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. I think there is something to a 305.
Okay.
5 first pitch. I think there is definitely something to the nostalgia that could be recaptured if you offered a little bit more reverence to opening day,
And I'm gonna tell you the worst part about it, and this is why football gets it right, is that the majority of the games football plays are when your kids are awake and you can watch it with them. Right? Like my kids are still gonna be in school for another hour or two after that of baseball. Right? So they know opening day is gonna come on. And they also will not see any of like the bunting or the plane flyovers or none of the celebratory fashions of the game. And like what are we doing? Like honestly, if you want kids to play baseball or pay attention to quote unquote America's pastime, set it up in a way that they can be excited and participate. There actually been, I don't know if you knew this, Sam, did you know that there was baseball regular season's already actually begun? The Dodgers and the Padres played.
So this season has begun.
Yes. The Dodgers and the Padres.
The stats, or I'm sorry, opening day, I was getting confused by the MLB calendar I was looking at because I was like, well, looks like games are games. Wait, it's not opening day, it's just opening day for the Phillies?
It is not opening day for the Phillies. The Dodgers and the Padres played in Seoul, South Korea. And I don't know that if it was 2 games or 3 games, but they had a series there already. So
that counts.
That counts. Yes. Yes.
Wait. MLB opened up the season in Korea?
Yes.
Interesting.
As though Shohei Ohtani wasn't big enough, right? Like they watching Shohei Ohtani. Everybody's watching Shohei Ohtani. The problem is that here we are not watching unless you gamble, then you watching Shohei Ohtani.
Wait a minute, you know there's another player now, right? In the NBA? Prop bets, literally betting on himself. So he was suspended going into tonight's game. Let's see, NBA players happened.
I saw Jonte Jones or Dante Jones. Is that his name?
What is his name? From the Raptors?
I don't recall his exact name, but I know that he's not necessarily a well-established NBA rotation guy.
Right, Jonte Porter. Jonte Porter. The NBA is investigating Toronto forward Jonte Porter for betting irregularities relating to NBA games, including the possibility he bet under on his own performances.
Yo, he knew what time it was.
Oh no.
He knew what time it was. He knew.
No.
He knew.
Oh, say they so Jonte.
He knew he wasn't a bucket.
Not. Oh no.
He knew it.
Under. You can't bet the under on your own performances. Listen. I mean, listen. If there is literally a cardinal rule to the whole idea of why you don't have sports betting, that is it. It's not simply the idea of players playing with the incentives of money. It's the idea of players underperforming for the incentive of money. And for him to just take matters in his own hands and say, I can place my own bet on my performances. I don't get a bookie.
Jonte Porter will not hit a 3-pointer. Jonte Porter will not get more than 10 minutes.
I'm going to grow this contract. I got 82 games. I got 82 games to secure the bag.
Listen.
I was like, wait a minute.
He ain't getting it. Listen, we already knew what time it was. We knew. He knew what time it was.
There's some irregularities coming out of Toronto.
Listen, he knew what it was. He knew. Like post game, like Jonte, why did you shoot 15 threes tonight? Hey, Jonte, we noticed that you missed every layup opportunity tonight. Jonte, can you explain what happened?
Man, like, how do you look at your teammates in the eyes after this, man? Talking about this is how you get blackballed from professional sports.
But wait. Let's
end up on the right side of this when it comes to betting the under on yourself, man.
But who do you listen, Sam? We see it on both ends. We got Shohei, and to quickly paraphrase, in case you haven't been paying super close attention to that, or for people who don't know, Shohei alleged today there's an interpreter stole $4 and some change million from him, and that he bet that on his own. He accumulated these debts that he was unaware. He did not direct. He did not have anything to do with the transactions. This is a guy who spends all of the time with him, who is close with his family, that is absolutely aware of and made bets relating to his specific performances. So we're going to really believe that he had no knowledge whatsoever what was going on. And then on the flip side of it, Jonte knew he wasn't going to pull up and hit no threes tonight. Come on, dog. Like you knew you wasn't wet from the corner. So like honestly, I look at it, I'm thinking to myself,
I would start teasing these lines a little bit.
Yo, Jonte had the first 10-game parlay or 10-team parlay involving himself, yo. It was like,
I mean, come on, man.
listen, but what do you, Sam, when you can literally bet what the outcome of a quarter or how many shot attempts will be taken in a or runs in a game?
Think about the Super Bowl. Think about the Super Bowl. The streaker who changed the game. I guarantee that they don't have that prop bet next year.
Right. Right.
The guy was like, sure, I'll bet there's a streaker, calculated my fine's gonna cost me roughly tops $5,000, all things considered. I'm putting the house on this one.
Exactly.
That's what he did. It's just like the costs make it. Listen. Wow. The game.
So I can't blame in a degree like you. Whether it be Major League Baseball, whether it be NBA, you've opened up this can of worms.
Agreed. You have to learn how to manage it, and you can't just become heavy-handed on the players and act like there's not this elephant in the room in terms of how you are actively promoting it within your game.
Right. ESPN has ESPN Bet now, right? Like that's a program that they run. ESPN Bet. So we are handicapping. We are making parlays. We are doing over-unders. We are betting fictitious amounts. Like, this is ridiculous.
So our friend Burrow, who joined the show, joined the program last year, this is what he sent me today. He said, welcome back to Sports Center, presented by ESPN Bet. For more on the Ohtani situation, we go to our FanDuel MLB insider, Jeff Passan, at our DraftKings studio in Los Angeles, brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. Jeff, how could something like this happen?
Wait, is that real?
It could be, right? The irony in it all. It's like, come on, y'all.
Yo, but honestly, what's wild about that is I thought you was reading like an actual read. Like I thought that was an actual like introduction.
Because that's how often you see it.
Right.
Like sponsorships in terms of the gambling sites are all over everything right now.
Yeah.
So as the fan, I'm saying that could have been a lead into a news story.
There's no question. Chances are it probably is. If I was watching TV right now, it probably will be the next one whenever the Sports Center comes on next time. And so it's outrageous, man. But to say all of that, I would bet on the Phillies to make the postseason. I'm not sure I bet on them to win the World Series. I would bet on them in the postseason, no question. I would bet on them to make a significant trade deadline acquisition if necessary. I think we have to optimize Bryce Harper. I think the bullpen, while still strong, you got a lot of moving parts and hoping that everyone performs to level. Kirkering, is Dominguez going to come back? Alvarado, is he going to get run down? What's Hoffman going to give you? But I think they'll be there. It's just a question of how far will they go and what will they be able to do to kind of help realize that like we're going to break through this season.
I see. I think if Trey Turner in his second year here really comes into form and offers you consistency throughout the season, I think that will help position us to avoid the wild card potentially. And I also I think he showed up to bat in the postseason. I really, it was a really disappointing way to lose to that young team when we really thought that we were in the driver's seat.
Coming home to play in the bank up,
And so that was tough, but them's the breaks with baseball, man. It's one of those finicky games where you get hot, you get cold. And it's strange like that. It's unlike basketball, and so, but with that said, basketball, what unlike this Philadelphia 76ers, they actually showed us wrong and got one of the wins that we didn't see, And again, here was the cool part about the game. One, there was a lot of Sixers fans in the building. It was a really pro Sixers crowd. That was always good to see when the fans show up on the road. It just as a Philly sports fan, like you just identify and connect with those experiences. Like it makes you feel proud. It's part of why we do what we do, because growing up from over here, like that's how you feel about it, and so you feel connected to the game. You felt the runs that were happening in the game. You like the way the team played. like the ball movement. You like when guys sort of found their spots and took the opportunities. You like how guys defer to hot hands. And then defensively, I thought that their effort was great. You know, they had a lot of blocks at the rim. I mean, I just thought that they played a sound um, game with effort, energy, cohesiveness, connectedness. And they relied on each other, and guys stepped up, and they got a good win on the road.
We've crushed Tobias. You have to give him credit for this one. We've absolutely, I think everybody's crushed Tobias. I think that's like, you know, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt crush Tobias. Like that's like kind of on the same level. I like him. Last night I liked him a lot more. Or yesterday I liked him a lot more because of what he did and because he was, I think he read the game well. I think he saw that Maxey was kind of being keyed in on, and he will be. Max is a young player, but it's to be expected. He's kind of scored and been as dynamic as he's been this season. Tobias was in rhythm. He was looking for his own shot. He was the kind of relief and a reliable option that the Sixers were hoping to probably get more of while Embiid's been out. We got the benefit of campaign. I got to tell you, man, I liked Pat Bev. I didn't like Pat Bev to go ahead and start like flipping over cars and like lighting torches.
That's my thing. It's like you like Pat Bev, but there's no version of Pat Bev that includes him being on a heater.
No, or that in an instance in which campaign or Kyle Lowry can give us that as an option off the bench or starting in a spot. Pat Bev doesn't ever do that. And I like Pat Bev. I like Pat Bev because he is a great glue player.
He's a great glue player who hits the shots that he's supposed to take when he's supposed to take it. But he is not a shot creator. He is not a bail the offense out kind of player. And Campaign is showing that he has a little bit of that kind of capability.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So for all of those reasons, I have to say that the Sixers now, and my fingers are crossed, and I don't even want to talk about it, but Embiid is supposedly practicing. He is targeting like the next 2-3 weeks to possibly come back. So he'll have a handful of games. No expectation that he's going to be like MVP Embiid. But if he comes back and has any ability to perform at a level where he's a viable threat, and his presence makes him a threat,
it does. Listen, it's about matchups. Okay, so let me ask you this. I know this is a little bit premature, and granted, this is just off of one win against the Clippers. Now they're playing now against the Kings. They're in the game. It's a 3-point game. Like I told you, I'm going to the game Wednesday when they play their revenge game, or back sort of against the Clippers. In terms of matchups for the Sixers, what do you think? Who are the teams where you say, "Hey, this just does not work for them"? Right? We kind of looked at the Phillies a little bit and was just like, they just have to get in. But when we think about the Sixers, obviously outside of the big two, because we already sort of talked about why we want them to avoid the play-in scenario altogether. So outside of the big two, are there still other teams where it's just like, hey, let's just jump ball?
So I would have been a bit more circumspect of the Knicks, but Anunoby's been out. Randall's been off injured. I believe Brunson is back, but he's had some injury issues as well. Indiana is a bucket. It's the opposite of your boy Porter, but my bad. But
big irregularities coming out of Canada.
Yeah, right. We're this brother has scored 2 points.
Like is what's the movie? It's like shoot the three.
Listen, he was pulling regardless.
Oh my God.
Regardless. No, I think Indiana will cause matchup issues because of their ability to score the basketball, and I don't think that we can compete at that level. They've started to kind of slow down. I think Halliburton came back a little prematurely, and he's got some injury issues. The thing that's interesting there is I kind of wonder why he came back.
What do you have to wonder? It was documented why he came back. He was trying to hit that threshold. That's the whole thing. It's like he wants to qualify for all the NBA. Like he talked about it. He talked about the fact that it's like they put these situation limitations so guys are and he was lamenting the fact that he felt he was obligated to play 65 games by any means necessary.
So now his performance is diminished. And we're looking at a player who was on a heater beginning of the season, and this dude is not shooting nearly the percentages he was.
Can't buy a bucket.
Right.
Yeah, that. And to me, like, that was just like his 3-pointer, he was almost shooting closer to 50%. Like, it was just an automatic shot for him.
You had to guard that brother from like half court. Like, there's no question.
Unbelievable.
There was no question. Now he's not even the same dude anymore.
There's still rumors that there was a possible trade opportunity for us to have gotten him for Ben Simmons originally.
Could you imagine?
Both Tyrese, the only two Tyrese's in the NBA on the same team.
Could you imagine? Listen, I mean,
the spacing that this team would have offered him, man.
You're making me sweat, man. I'm mad about this right now. Don't talk. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
In terms of matchups, I don't love the Knicks matchup, Anunoby or not, because I just think their guards still create issues for our guards. I think their wings dominate our wings generally. Jalen Brunson has been taking Maxey to school since Maxey's been in the NBA. I just feel like for some reason it's a game that Brunson takes personal.
Yeah.
I look at it, I just see it that way. And I think that Maxey takes notes. I think he's a good student, so I love seeing them go head to head. But the other players on the Knicks, for some reason, just really kind of get in our guards and make it really, really difficult and challenging. And even though we won a game recently, I think our head to heads, it might be 1-3 at this point against the Knicks.
Yeah,
and,
I don't know if I'm seeing this.
Yeah. And I think the Knicks have won convincingly, if I recall. So, I don't think it's a great matchup for us. I would want to avoid it. Indiana is a team, to your point, that is inconsistent. I think they probably would have been our next threat. I'm not afraid of Miami with the big fella. I think
I was going to ask you about that because we've not seen them consistent with Jimmy Butler. I don't know if Jimmy Butler is just kind of biding his time, or if he is actually hurt and diminished. I'm not really sure which it is, but
I think what we're seeing with Jimmy Butler is a scenario where it's almost like the Phillies, where they're like, look, we just need to get in. We have a team. We grow our players along the way. Yeah. We're not afraid of the play-in. So even if the play-in is something that we exhaust this option of being part of the dance, then we'll go this route. Jimmy Butler, we want a 100% Jimmy Butler. So if there's anything nagging, lingering, we're willing to have him play limited time throughout the regular season. I'm sure that what they do is look at different matchups that they play and lineups that they have throughout the season and make sure they insert him so that he gets a feel of playing with all the guys throughout the year. It's like you look at their team and you see Terry Rozier going to work. It's like the Heat always have so many different iterations of their team throughout the season.
And they find guys.
But here's what's funny. The Sixers this year, I want to say they mentioned this, I guess the Lakers maybe, that they played 27 guys and the most players of any team this season. The Sixers have played 27 different guys this year. So we almost, like with Nick Nurse, we're almost Heat-like. And that's why I always liked Nick Nurse, because he developed young guys and was willing to exhaust his bench, just to see if you just to see. Here was a term that I used in years past that I lamented with Doc Rivers. I said, how come NBA coaches don't just use the tools they have in their tool belt? I just felt like coaches were married to the minutes that guys are supposed to play based off of contract and or management, and they just would not use all of their tools. This goes back to my issues with like early Sixers runs when they were first time in the playoffs against Boston with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and they had like Ilyasova and Bellinelli who couldn't move at all. And I'm like, against Boston, I'm like, man, just throw your athletes in there. It's like put in Rashawn Holmes was a guy I just thought it was another, was it Fultz in that year? I think he was part of that year when they actually made a playoff run. It's like, just put him in the game. Who was the other guy? Oh man. He was like great offensively, but it's just like put your athletes in the game just to mix it up, but you just felt that guys just get tight with their rotations and they don't do that. Nick Nurse has shown to do that. And so you think that the Sixers might be one of those teams that will go very deep if they have to, depending on the situational basketball, to win a series. It's like they're going to throw the kitchen sink. We're now kind of one of those teams, I think, where like we're willing to throw the kitchen sink at you to win. as opposed to where we were in the past, where it's like, this is their bread and butter. This is what they're going to show you. All you have to do is game plan against this to win.
I think that's going to serve you well now in the regular season, because you're going to have injuries. I mean, we haven't seen Covington since he got traded here. Batum has been in and out of the lineup. Tobias has been in and out of the lineup. So you've had guys who have been. Melton may never come back. God bless it. So you need the depth to kind of sustain the attrition, or to withstand the attrition. Excuse me.
Right.
But at some point, we're going to get down to 8 core guys. That's it. And so, yeah, I mean, in the postseason, it's going to have to be that. It's going to have to be that. We're not going to have time for like Mo. We're not going to see Mo Bamba better get all he can right now. Right.
Oh, I agree. So here's where I agree and I disagree. I think that in some scenarios, you're only going to go too deep at a position, i.e. the backup center role. I think it is good. But see, that's where, again, I disagree. I think there are going to be games where it's B-Ball Paul, and there might be games where Mo Bamba gets his number called and you don't see B-Ball Paul.
Let me ask you this question. Now that we've had a more than a critical sampling of the Buddy Hield experience, what does he look like over the last few months where he's been here now, or the last month and a half, I guess, since
I still think Joel Embiid is the key to understanding who Buddy Hield is. I feel like he's playing on a team right now where guards are hunting shots. Our team, our wing players hunt shots. Like, they move the ball, but they all hunt shots. No one's looking to set up Buddy Hield. When he plays the gravity of a Joel Embiid, then you'll understand how dynamic and why the Sixers thought about those two specifically. Yeah. Like, he's one of those guys where it's like, you have to play. You're going to just get burnt. Something has to, like, he's going to create an issue on your defensive principles every possession just because those two are on the court together.
The part that I was hoping to see continue when he first came on, I was really surprised that he was so willing to put the ball on the floor. We've not seen as much of that. I completely understand that if you're going to be a one-trick pony, they are eventually going to figure out that one trick. So I would have loved to see him continue to, draw out defenders, put the ball on the floor, and then create from there. Speaking of creating, I got to get my man Kelly Oubre a shout. Kelly Oubre had like 6 assists last night.
Listen, Kelly,
I don't know who told him.
Listen, Kelly, he's one of those guys where you're still thinking about next year. Like, is he part of the long-term plans of how this is built?
I'm gonna tell you, man, you need to be thinking about FanDuel and see if he bet on himself to have more than 5 assists. That's the investigation. Kelly Oubre hasn't had 6 assists all his life, yo, in a season. Yo, so now we need to go back and look. Yo, the Kelly DraftKings wants to report that Kelly Oubre had 6 assists.
Here's my thing. I just hope, what if it's not an anomaly? Like, what if Kelly looks at the game a little bit differently in terms of what his impact is and says, hey, I can really show my value if I unlock this part of how I look at the game. Because he's always going to attack. That part he can't stop doing. But if he can attack and understand, okay, this defender means he's open, just like as an instinctual thought that if I see 2, find the 1, and be creative about forcing, or like you're now driving to pull in that second so that you can quickly find the 1. That could be something, again, as we look into the playoffs. What excites me about this team this year, unlike any other team, is to me their offensive versatility.
Yeah.
And I think that if you get another player who was a scorer first, who now can understand the value of playmaking for others, and then still get a Joel Embiid back, it's going to be really hard to defend us. Really, really challenging to defend us.
I like the flexibility that he creates. I mean, his ability to come in and score. He's a decent shooter. He's competent off the ball, off the dribble, and he will dunk on you. Like, let's not sleep on that. Like, he's a dude. We'd have a lot of guys. Ben Simmons might have been one who will just rack it on you, dog. Like, he will go at you, and he looks at that enough. So he's a threat on the roll to the basket. He's a threat crashing off rebounds. So I like the idea that he is a wing defender who is a competent scorer. He's more than just to stand in the corner and shoot, catch and shoot, and he will go to the rack a little bit. I like that. So I don't know. I got to give him a shout out because we definitely talked about him before, and I definitely said he only had one option that was shoot all the time. And I was pleasantly surprised that he had 6 last night. I believe it was 6 last night in his game against the Clippers.
So for those, who may join us tonight, I did drop the link down. All we ask is that you're willing to cam up if you want to join the show. Just to kind of chop it up and take on the topics that we're discussing. But yeah, last night's game I thought was a great effort. Again, I think we're still dropping in the standings, however, again, the question is there still an opportunity to avoid the play-in? I think it would come down to Joel Embiid's availability during the end of the season. If he does come back, towards the first week of April, which is actually next week, then maybe there is a chance that the Sixers do get a good stretch of games in, and other things obviously have to break in our favor, where we do secure the 6th seed. And I think that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
But even in a scenario where we're the 7th or 8th, whoever we play, quite frankly, I think this season is what it is, and having Joel Embiid available in the playoffs to me still offer us real insight into what this team could be, regardless of who we have to face in the first round. I just think that
we are going to have to play
is regardless of who we have to play.
Well, to that same point, we're going to have to play Boston or Milwaukee at some point in time.
Right.
I don't necessarily love the idea of having him just come back and then go take that test right away.
Right.
But we're going to play him at some point in time. There's no path to the Eastern Conference Finals that doesn't involve one of them. So let's just get it knocked out.
I agree. So speaking of knocking out, how about this year's college NCAA tournament? Isn't that around a knockout, as they say, a one and done?
So let me ask you a question. Have you watched, have you sat and paid super close attention to the men's or the women's tournament at all this year?
So if I'm being honest to our listeners, what I'll say is that I have caught the highlights of a lot of the performances. I've caught the tail ends of a few games if I'm in venues. I also sat with my children Saturday to start a couple of games, but we did not see the ending of any of those games. So I've been watching it in spurts. I've been hearing a lot of the excitement in terms of the upsets. So there are a few names that are becoming synonymous with this year's tournament. One of the players is already sort of exited. I think he was like an 8-year player out of
Oakland. Greg
right. He had a full 4-year career at the Division II level, and then a 5-year career at Division I. I don't understand how.
I think he had a full-time job too. I think he was playing ball while having a full-time job. I think he took 2 weeks off. Yeah,
he did. Leave for the tournament. But so those stories are always fun. I know there's a big fella out of NC State that is, he knocked him out, right? So he's the other guy who is seeming to be the star, one of the stars of the tournament. I think that's at this stage, that's kind of what I pick up on. It's like who are the guys, that stand out where like the media is now following,
So there used to be a point in time where I would, because the Sixers were so bad, I would really get into the tournament because I was looking for who might they draft. I could not care less about the bracket's always fun, but I don't know if men's basketball specifically, because women's basketball game I think is up, like it's all the way up, but the men's game is diluted. There's no identity. I think the coaches have recognized that, and you've seen a lot of the guys who have been kind of like legends start to distance themselves. The Bull Bill Self from Kansas was like, "Oh, I've already been thinking about next year's team for a while." What? Like you got Cal Perry in Kentucky talking about the players and the freshmen that he's got, and that's been how he's been running. He hasn't won a significant run in quite some time. Jay Wright is on the set talking about the days of having young players one and done beat guys who are more established is over. Like that's done. The tournament isn't the same. It isn't the same. And my interest in it, yeah, you have great moments. There's no question. But my interest in it and the certain level of attention paid to it. And now they're talking about adding more teams to this thing. For what?
To the tournament.
Yeah, like, are we adding JUCOs? Like, who are we adding to these tournaments?
They're trying to figure out why they're losing viewers, and so it's like more teams. Here's what I think could create some, make a little bit more compelling. If you have teams that have, more of your older roster are beating some of your diaper dandies more regularly, then I think you create a model where some of these top tier players spend multiple years in college basketball. And I think if that happens, then the game has ultimately a better product. Because I think what Jay Wright was speaking to is a situation where these young players still don't know how to play the game.
Correct.
They're very talented, but they lack a lot of fundamentals, whether it's just footwork, but even just how they see the game. And because of that, they're going to be beat by more experienced players. And so if those guys can be exposed in college and NBA teams say, hey, you need to continue, or telling their I want to say their agents, they're not supposed to have agents, but however they communicate to their representatives to say, look, I need you to he needs to grow his game a little bit more. And I think the NBA has to start towing the line on how they draft guys, because if they continue to take the potential, you'll always get guys who aren't ready to play basketball that are drafted because of what they could be. If listen, look at the guy out of the Miami Heat, right? Jaquez.
Jaquez, yeah.
Jaquez. I mean, good night. It's like, here's a guy who comes in ready to play right away.
Yeah.
I don't care what organization you are. If I can get that kind of production from a first-year player and let's say in 3 years he incrementally gets better, but let's say he has a lower ceiling than someone else where there's a high risk, high reward. There might be a high reward, but there's still a high risk as well. And
he might be Buddy Hield. He might be a player like that, a rotation NBA guy.
Exactly. So to me, those are the guys that I think if GMs start making decisions to bring in guys who can help their teams play right away in terms of drafting guys like that, then maybe you have a changing of the tide where young players stay in college to learn how to play basketball first before they become pros.
The NBA they prevented the one and done. Excuse me. Excuse me. And that deterred some of it. But I also think a part of it has to do with, we can talk about NIL till our faces are blue, but realignment is a big part of this. And there aren't the conferences and there aren't the rivalries. I remember like Big East Mondays or Big East Tuesdays or whatever day it was, and ACC Wednesdays. Like, those were a big deal. And college basketball is worse off because now you've got these unnatural rivalries where you've got teams that have no business playing each other, where you've got kids who are transferring just to consolidate to get on either TV or as part of a conference that has the best television deal. This isn't a players thing, right? I don't think it's the players thing because the NBA did not change the rule to allow you to come early. There aren't a bunch of kids who are going to play in Europe. There aren't a bunch of kids who are playing in like the G League. There's still a talent base there. There's an issue at college, and it's not necessarily NBA's job to fix, although I think they would be better for being involved in a solution. But right now, there's no actual difference between what is being done at the college level and with the pros now as it was to 5 years, except the change in environment, the change in the conferences, the change in the NIL, the amount of transfers. And I just don't care anymore, honestly.
Yeah. But I think there also is another fundamental issue that college and the pros are having to come to grips with, and it's the I won't say introduction of AAU, but the new role of AAU basketball and how it has turned the youth game into exhibition play. And exhibition basketball is not the same as team basketball. It's just not the same. When you're playing with concepts that allow you to showcase your skills and talents, it's a different scheme than a connective offensive flow of cutting, passing, moving the ball, understanding why you cut. because there's the why that's not being taught at that level. So guys don't understand why it is in their best interest to learn to cut and move without the ball and things like that. Like they don't know the game, the nuances of the game, because the way they've been taught it is clear out, give you my space, or give you my pick and roll. It's like, hey, no, you get out the way. Like, what are you doing standing there? No, you move, and then you move, and now I'm going to show them how I play basketball.
Right. No, I get it.
A lot of guys, and unfortunately, that's who everyone's getting. So even at the college level, they're getting these guys that play this way, and at the pro level, and you know, there's conversations about how we change the AAU model, because what's going to happen is that European players. I mean, I feel like the commissioner was just talking about having a game, and he said he thinks that it may not even be in the U.S.'s best interest to have a U.S. versus international All-Star game. I don't think he's confident that the American team wins that game, you know. And so I mean, you think about it. You talk about Giannis, Jokic. Well, I mean, Embiid. Let's say for the sake of the conversation, let's say Embiid is. Well, no.
If he's being considered for the U.S. Olympic team, you on the U.S. side.
Understood. Okay, so he is technically on the U.S. side, which helps. Luka, you know, Sabonis, because I'm looking at him against the Sixers, right? And he's
you would probably go Luka, Shea. You would go Giannis. You might go. Is Wemby on that team?
Wemby's definitely on that team.
He's on the top 12.
He's not starting.
Right. He's the top 12 guy. I'm trying to think about anybody else. Cat is American. Oklahoma City's got Shea. Boston, nobody. You have to run through the roster. But I think it's a useful exercise. Jamal Murray's Canadian.
Jamal Murray. Yep. So you get Jamal Murray. So you have there. You have
I mean, with your five of some combination of Shea, Doncic, Jokic, Giannis, I don't even know who my fifth guy would be, but that's a nasty five right there.
Right, and again, you still have Sabonis, who's still a handful, and he's a banger. You know, if you think about in the course of the game, you know, listen, he's going to provide you those key possessions in terms of rebounding, effort. He wears down the opposing team. Like, Sabonis is a handful. I love how he plays the game. To me, he always appears undersized. Even Joel Embiid has challenges with him. He doesn't dominate Joel Embiid doesn't really. He's had better games against Sabonis, but I'm telling you, historically, Sabonis holds his own against Joel Embiid. It's fascinating to watch, man, because before he played in Indiana, so that's where you would see a lot of those matchups every year. Yeah. And I'm like, this guy is not being overwhelmed right now. I don't know why, but yeah. So you know, I think the Sixers will do something. Or I'm sorry, in terms of the NCAA tournament, these young players, you know, I think again, you're seeing the impact or the effects of poorly taught play at the high school level, and it's transitioning directly into both college and pros. And now you're having teams that have old. Here's another thing that's interesting. The average age of UNC is, I think, the same as the average age of OKC. Right. So again, you have another team.
What's my man on UNC's team, the center? Armando Becato. Their brother's like 24, 25 years old. Doug, I think he was a freshman when Jordan was in the league. Like, come on, bro. It's time. Like, it's time.
So I just saw that. I saw that stat, man, and I was like, that's hilarious. But again, it speaks to, first of all, okay, so let me just ask the question. It's 22.2 of the average of starters, 22.2. So who do you have winning the whole thing? Let's just ask the question, because I think by next week's show, it'll be like the final four have been selected by the end of next week.
First week in April, sometime, yeah.
First week in April, yeah. So after this weekend, because it's going into Sweet 16 this weekend,
we should have an answer. We should have an answer for Final Four this coming weekend.
Final Four. So so before that, because obviously only 4 teams left, who do you have win the whole thing?
I think I go with UConn. I think yeah, I got UConn. I think Hurley is, and I think that's where I think this is the answer to it. Because because I think the AAU is a real problem. I think recruiting is a problem. I think having to play players that are big time recruits and maybe on NIL deals are a problem. So you have to have the right environment to protect and actually maintain the integrity of the coaching system. The development system, and it's through coaching. And you've got to have a strong AD, and the university is going to support the coach throughout all of that. And I think Hurley is that guy. So I really like what they do. I think other teams, certainly, I think Houston's been really good. But I like UConn's tenacity on defense. I like their ability to score. They've got multiple ball handlers and their ability to kind of play with size and versatility. I like UConn. And that pains me because I used to rock with Villanova and Kerry Kittles and all those dudes back in the day. And so it immediately takes me back to like Ray Allen and Khalid El Amin, but here we are.
So I'm going to go with North Carolina. And here's why I'm saying North Carolina. Because a young man from my church likes North Carolina. That's where I am when it comes to the bracket this year.
Don't be bringing Jesus into this.
Listen, I'm so removed from understanding what is happening at this level of the game that I am taking his word for it. That I'll then go on
my own. You put me in a spot where I actually have to root against God, like God,
like on my own program and say I'm gonna go with the Tar Heels for no other reason other than this young man seems to be really excited about selecting them on Sunday.
Like, if he don't come back to church because he don't believe that God likes the Tar Heels, like I don't want to have his whole salvation in my hands. So, well, it is what it is. It is what it is. I can see North Carolina. I mean, they've obviously got significant experience on the basketball court, in life, in retirement, whatever. But I'm gonna ride with UConn.
So no Duke for you this year?
No, I don't think that they've been a consistent enough scorer, and I like Hurley as a coach.
Gotcha.
I do. I really do.
I like Hurley, man. Yeah, he's yeah, that works for them. So I wanted to leave a little bit of time on here to kind of get into what we're processing, and maybe let me go first and kind of knock mine out real quick.
Don't knock it out quick.
Yeah, well, no, I think part of it, honestly, so it's twofold. I wanted to make one quick point, and then I'll sort of talk about what I'm processing this week. But the first quick point is sort of to just continue on. I won't say just sort of the Howie Roseman conversation from last week, but in terms of Eagles team building, what I think they may be attempting to do. I think what we're seeing out of the Eagles is a situation where I've mentioned before to players or to people how I felt like, wow, the Eagles almost look like the SEC of college football. And this is when the SEC actually was the SEC. Now it seems because of the transfer portal, even that doesn't really exist the way it does anymore. The transfer portal also, I think, is something else that we have to really dive into in terms of how it's changed college sports. Because the NCAA, the SEC, I don't think reigns supreme as the power conference that I once considered it in college football, even though it's still got its two teams in, right? It still found a way to get Alabama
and Georgia are routinely there, yeah.
Right, but now you think with Saban stepping down, Alabama's not going to continue potentially to be the Alabama that we once knew. So
See, I thought you were going to go somewhere else with what you were about to say, and not to go into wild a tangent. I thought you were going to say that in terms of the landscape with college sports, we're going to start to see players with the transfer portal. Coaches have been transfer portaling all over the place. Coaches will leave whenever they want to leave, and players have been kind of stuck holding the bag. I'm waiting for the next thing where players are going to start. You see, there was a lot of conversation about Deion Sanders saying Shedeur Sanders can't go to certain places. During the season, Travis Hunter of Colorado was doing a lot of social media, and I think he was on various platforms talking about the game, his experience, and so on. I'm waiting for college athletes to start getting their own platforms to be critical of or to be outspoken the same way that these pros are. I'm waiting for that to happen. When you're going to have
shows.
I'm sorry?
When they have their own shows.
Whether it be their own show. I mean, you see guys like, Paul George or Gilbert Arenas or all these players, Draymond Green, all have their platforms now.
Yeah,
right?
no, you're right, and there are college players that are doing that. I think to your point, some are less some have different level of charisma, but and we're 20 years older than they are, so we may not be part of that circle yet, but these guys have followings,
Like
and
Angel Reese for LSU
right.
said the other day, she said something to the effect of like, I've got deals with apparel brands or footwear brands.
She can make
Those
more
deals.
money in college.
I'm sorry.
I think she was saying that like her earning potential is more like she has more of an earning opportunity in college.
That's exactly where I was going. So why wouldn't she be incentivized? I don't know what her status is right now. If she can leave to go to the WNBA, or if she intends to, or if she's out of eligibility. I don't know that. But irrespective of that, she can stay at LSU, make all of the money at NIL, add to it some kind of media component, and now she's got this base to go forward. Like her WNBA check, she probably won't even cash.
Right. It listen, and the funny thing is that is the route she probably will take. There's no incentive for any of these women to leave school early.
None.
None.
Caitlin Clark will leave early. Caitlin Clark will leave early.
But
And
see, here's the beautiful part though. You said she will leave early?
I think Caitlin Clark is already declared. I think she already declared.
Wait. She's the all-time leading scorer in college history and she has more eligibility?
I think she has one more year. I could be mistaken.
That'd be kind of crazy if she has more eligibility and she broke the all-time scoring record and she could play another whole season.
She has one
like
more.
She has
she announced. I'm near certain she announced with eligibility remaining. I know we are completely going aside from your processing, but
right.
She, I believe, has another season of eligibility and has already declared that she is out and going to the league next year.
Okay. Well, if I were her,
Why?
Right. Why would I leave? Like you were college basketball. You are college basketball right now. And so you go into the WNBA, it's a different level of notoriety. There's a different level of media coverage. Everything changes. Like you are it for an entire college season. That to me, and you're allowed to earn off of that. You're allowed to openly earn off of everything that you're creating for yourself in terms of notoriety, etc.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listen, she's out. She's out,
Yeah.
and I actually do not mind. I shouldn't say that's the wrong way of saying it. I actually do enjoy the WNBA. I enjoy like Asia Wilson or Brianna Stewart's a monster, right? I enjoy a lot of those women's games. But just unfortunately, the way it is set up in this country is that they just don't get the requisite level of attention, as does women's college basketball.
Right.
She is a god right now.
Right.
That's it.
Right. The country knows your name.
But like, listen, I would bet you $1 right now that the majority of the country did not know Sabrina Ionescu. I'm saying her last name wrong. I apologize.
Right.
From the Liberty until she shot in that 3-point contest against Steph Curry. That's it. Even though she's the absolute monster.
I agree.
Unfortunately, that's what it is.
So back to the point. All right. So one on the tangent they're talking about the SEC. The point is they used to be really dominant in terms of a conference, and the part of their dominance was the fact that they got all the 5-star recruits. They all went to Alabama. They all went to Auburn. They all went to all these big time SEC schools. And what you saw generally was programs that at every position could throw out real players and real options. Right? It's like, wow, they fielded a team of guys. At every position is a guy. And I think the Philadelphia Eagles are trying to put together a roster that is filled with all dudes. Like there's no holes, there's no Watkins, on the team anymore. Not that he couldn't play, but you're not sure. You're hoping that he does well. There's no more hopefuls anymore. It's guys that has shown that they can play. They know why they're in the NFL, and they know why they earn their living, right? Like there's no lost confidence in terms of their ability. They understand how to get the job done, and they understand how to do that with others. And I'm like, man, if we actually are putting out a roster of just dudes, guys who know they and everyone in the league knows all those
He's gonna
guys
get
can
it.
play. Come on, man. Like psychologically, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
You know, when you're the other team, you look across the field and you realize, like, man, they have guys that every time someone comes on the field, it's a guy. And if all that means that we have to pay a little bit more upfront money to secure their interest, that's outside of the salary cap, and our owner is saying, "Listen, I'll pay it to win. I want to see what it looks like to have a field of actual real players at every spot, at every hole, that I can plug in a guy for a guy. How much is that going to cost me? Let's see what it looks like."
The Eagles, I see what you're saying. My thought is this: they're going to rely on Eli Ricks, Mario Goodrich, Isaiah Rodgers. What's my man who got hurt last season? The safety that got hurt.
Blankenship.
I'm not blanking. Blankenship is another one, but the rookie last year, I can't remember his name. Will lose me right now. Sidney Brown. They are going to rely on guys who they are hoping to emerge.
Agreed.
And unless I can't see a world. You can say what you want. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about just in general, like Roseman, the Eagles, whatever it is. They can say what you want, but I can't see a world. Bradbury was getting cooked up and down the field last year. Like I can go out and get a hot, 5 for 62 right now on dude, but he can't be here, not based on his performance. And so if you're going to play him based on contract, well, you're going to have to support him with or substitute him with these other guys I just mentioned. Because on offense, I would agree, but on Sam's defense, listen, you got a lot of questions still. Like you're talking about trading Reddick. Who's your rush end? Where are you going to get sacks from? If you're going to transition to a 3-4, then all of a sudden you're losing a guy capable of going out and getting you 20.
Right. But what I'm saying is you still have decisions to make. And the way they are building this team right now, there's no question marks in terms of who they're bringing in. They're not bringing in maybes, right?
No,
so now let's see what they do in terms of preparing for this draft, how they flip assets and resources to bring in additional pieces that I think are pieces that we are going to use and going to see on the field. I am still will give Howie benefit of the doubt in terms of understanding the job is not done. And I still think that there's still money to be spent. Here's my issue my thoughts on Bradbury. I thought he was horrendous last year. I didn't think the defense was good last year.
Right.
So I still think he's a better player than what he showed us last year. I think if we get home with pressures a little bit more, I think that helps him in terms of his coverage. I also think that schematically, they were just in bad positions. I mean, how many times did we see them line up on 3rd and long and they're beyond the sticks?
Yeah.
It's like schematic. Like what is the idea in terms of concept here? Of course, he's going to be open for a pass to get a first to convert. We were the worst on 3rd down defense.
But I think part of it is the fact that I don't want to. The Eagles were slow last season. I mean, they were slow. Blankenship is a good player, but he's slow. Bradbury might have been a good player. He's slow. Slay is older. I'm sure he's not the same guy. You got Zach Cunningham. He was slow. You had a lot of dudes. Brandon Graham is, stout against the run. He had one, as much as we may love him, and he will be an Eagle forever, and he's going to be in the Eagles Ring of Fame. He is a one-time double-digit sack guy, right, for the entire season. So, we don't have dudes on defense where it's like, we got to make sure we block that guy. We got to make sure, like, we got Micah Parsons. We had Aaron Donald, or we had Chris Jones. Where's that guy at? And Eagles, I'm guessing this defense is going to be heavily focused in the draft. And then I would assume there will be some cuts, and that's probably where they're going to spend their money.
Right. I think we're going to look at, I know they're hoping for Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis to emerge, one as a run stopper, and two, just a disruptor up front, right in the middle. I think if you pair that with the expectations for Huff, I think the scenario with Huff that we have to also consider is how many snaps he played last year, and so he was able to get a lot done with limited snaps.
Yeah.
If you have him playing heavier snaps, what does that mean to his overall production? We don't know the answer to that yet, and so that's also something you have to think about. Hassan Reddick situation is a real one, and so depending on what they do there, again, here's what here's why I don't understand why we can't figure the Hassan thing out, especially the way we have been approaching free agency and just giving money to players. Why I don't know why that can't happen here. I don't know why we can't restructure in a situation where he gets his signing bonus and his cap number is reasonable, so that we can keep building the team. So that those are these are situations that are a little perplexing to me because I figured, hey, I thought we have a solution to address all of this stuff. Why does it not apply to a hometown guy who did something miraculous in that 1 year he had with us? And in a down year, he was sort of your one guy who still somehow was able to break through and emerge amongst a terrible defense.
Yeah.
And so I just think you should reward that. And when you bring in a guy like Huff who's saying, "Hey, I'm looking forward to playing alongside Hassan Reddick," that should be worth something if you're really trying to build a team to make a real run this year. And it's like if you're all in, then be all in.
I agree. Don't be all in and then try to rebuild on the fly. Like that doesn't really jive. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think they're going to probably try to take Reddick's numbers and reach that in parts. Devin White's the guy who needs to the quarterback or has gotten in the quarterback. I think they're going to try to really lean into Jalen Carter, maybe playing on the end. They brought back Sweat. They must have seen something from him. I don't know what it was. My man looked like he had one leg and was parking in the handicap space at the end of last season. So between Huff, Carter, White, the guys they brought in at linebacker from the Niners were core special teamers. I don't know if they see them as potential future defensive players of any sort, maybe rotation guys. And then you're looking at Nolan Smith. So, they may be trying to forecast and say, hey, listen, we've got Devontae Smith to come back in this time. We got Jalen Hurts, whose contract picks up in a year. So we got to find some way. That's the only thing I can see. But you better be right.
Nakobe Dean, I hope he turns into something in this year. Like, I've seen him be a playmaker. It's funny. He appears undersized to me as a linebacker, but he definitely gets his nose in there and makes plays. The issue is just his availability. He cannot stay on the field. He has not been able to stay on the field his whole career. And I think this is his last opportunity to stay on this team this year.
Well, I mean, how many, if you draft 6 Georgia or whatever the number was between Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Eli Ricks, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, if I said him,
it's another guy in the
how many of those guys, we had DeAndre Swift last year, how many of those guys are you going to hit on, right? Because when you have such wholesale turnover, what likely percentage are you going to be successful? Right. If you get 7 guys, how many of them are going to actually be fruitful? Somebody's going to have a down year. Somebody's going to be a bust. If you get 5, that's outstanding. Do we expect that? We'll see.
It's just unfortunate because of the guys that you're not. And we got another corner out of Georgia last year. I can't think of his name. It's not Eli. It's because he got on the field at the end of the season. Anyway, the thing about Nakobe Dean that's a little bit unfortunate is that like it's his leadership qualities that's like if you could have hit on the guy, that would have been a great guy to hit on.
It would have been helpful. Yep.
But so that's what I got.
Well, mine is mine is not quite a next conversation. I'm going to ask you a question, and this may be a dangerous topic. So, when you have younger children than I do, and so not speaking for your wife at all, when is the first time you expect your children to hear the N-word?
To hear it?
Yes. Not on TV, not on radio, to hear it, like said in their person or read it in a conversation or in a text or whatever age you think it is appropriate. Have you ever thought about that?
Two different questions, because you just said appropriate. So when you say appropriate, meaning when do I think the appropriate age is?
No, I didn't. If I said appropriate, that was a misspeak.
Okay.
When do you approximate, or have you ever thought about?
I've never thought about that.
What your reaction will be when your children hear for the very first time the N-word? When do you think that age will be? And what will be your response?
So, admittedly, I think it may have happened, and it actually all of it was kind of qualified as bad language. So I think it was when we took a train ride to a game, and on the sub.
Let me narrow it.
Okay,
Where it is directed.
I see. In a
Where
way
it's,
where, like, what was that? What is that?
yes, not some ancillary noise, not something in the
Yeah,
periphery.
that's all that happened. It was ancillary noise. It
Yeah.
was ancillary noise where it's like all of it was kind of dismissed. It's like, okay, you know, rabbit
So
ears
so
things.
the first time, so let me even be even more narrow, because I don't even know if you say it. I don't even know if it's in your vernacular. It's not really relevant. But not you or your wife, in jest with friends or family, because or whatever social way in which we tend to say the word, right? Um, what do you think your reaction will be the first time your son or your daughter tells you, Dad, what does the N word mean? Because little Johnny at my school said it to me at the playground, or said it around me at the playground, or little Johnny and some other friends that we were texting with, or little Samantha we were texting with, not Samantha, I don't want to use that name, Vanessa, right? We're texting with, and it was shared in a group chat in a meme or something like that. What, or they were reciting song lyrics and they said it. What do you think your reaction will be? I can take by your response that you've never thought about this before.
I haven't, not yet.
And so my question is,
Even approached that bridge yet.
my question is then, is the fact that your silence right now, is it because you have such a strong aversion to the N-word? As in your friends don't say it around you, you don't want to listen to it in songs, or you just had never thought about it in that personal circumstance as it relates to your babies?
I would say both.
So your friends never say it around you.
Not
You don't watch any
not
comedy or content.
not around my kids.
No, not around your kids. I'm saying in general. So if adults are talking, they know Sam does not fly. That word does not fly around Sam at all.
I mean, I don't think that generally speaking, in when I'm with friends, I don't think it's a word that is used
Okay.
in conversation. I think that if there could be, I mean, I'm saying that I'm sure that there are settings, like, I'm sure that there are settings where it has come up. But if I'm really thinking about, like, where I am today, I know that there are periods in my life where maybe the word may have been used more regularly
Sure.
amongst friends. I think in my 20s, it's possible that the word was just used more regularly amongst friends. I don't believe in my how I operate today, it's not really part of the
So
conversation.
if you were playing basketball, let me give you
Like,
some scenarios.
even in, like, our messages that we do in group text. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we do, like, voice memos, and
Right.
so, like, either with voice memos or language when we're typing something, like, we don't go there. So
Okay.
yeah, so I
I,
think so because of that is another reason why it's part, like, it hasn't crossing a bridge of that conversation with them. I haven't thought of it that I was at the door of that yet.
so let me tell you why I'm asking this question. Because my kids are a little bit more down the road than yours,
Right.
and I know without any certainty that now there's been multiple occasions in which my newly 11-year-old son has been confronted with that word. Not let me be very clear.
He's the oldest of your two?
He's the oldest of my two. I have an 11 and a 7-year-old. And this is not a recent thing. This has been there's been multiple occasions in which this has happened. It has been in sports contexts.
Mm.
It has been, not that this necessarily matters, but it has been people who are not of any kind of minority group. And it has not, in most cases, not been directed in a manner specific to him. In
Matt,
most
I just ask a question? When you
Please.
say the N word, now what you and how you are framing it, are we talking about the same N word?
As opposed to what
The
other versions?
AER in terms of the different versions? Because you're
So
me having it in conversation, and then as you are communicating and you're saying, I like, is the word communicated in the same kind of context?
I,
If
I, I'm gonna say that may not necessarily be relevant at that age, because I don't know that a child between the ages of 10 and 12 necessarily can make the nuanced discussion that you and I are talking about right now. Like when they
Well,
say,
I think that a child can still understand when a word is used against them.
well,
Like,
that's where I want to go to.
even if they
That
don't know what the word is, because I
that's where I
remember
want to.
my own experience moving to our own township.
Well, hold on, Stan. Let me get to where I'm going to, because that's exactly where I'm going. You just got to where I was going. So you just said you think a child can tell when a word is being used against them. And so the conversation around the N word, just I think in a macro level, and this is my position on it, this is not yours, this is nobody else's, is that a lot of times we hear, well, we can say it. I don't necessarily choose to say it. I may have said it, I may say it occasionally, but it's not something that is a frequent. It is very rare and maybe once in a while occurrence in which I even say it. Um, it is, we have a relationship to the word, so therefore we can say the word. You can't say the word because you don't have a relationship to the word. It's almost analogous to being like, I can call my wife babe or baby or honey because I have a relationship with her. So the word babe, baby, or honey or something like that means something different to her and I, as opposed to if some neighbor or some man, or if you call her that because you don't have that same kind of relationship. So the word means something different with her. Fair?
Hmm.
Okay. The problem I have with it is that when we talked a couple of weeks ago, 2 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, we talked about kind of the degradation of society, particularly with our youth, right? And when you talk about the school bus shooting, or whatever it was, or the bus shooting, whatever it was, and then we talk about kind of the way in which we don't see the humanity in someone else and what's going on around us. And then I'm looking at that word, and in the instances in which my son has been exposed to it, I'm thinking about the fact that this word is being used not necessarily as a weapon, but it is being thrown about in the same way in which a weapon could inadvertently go off and hurt someone. Right? A weapon in a home that is picked up and aimed at someone is different than a weapon who is found in a drawer, kids are playing with it, and it goes off. The outcome is still the same. The
Correct.
intention may not have been there. Right?
Right.
So when this word is said in text, or when it is used in a meme, or when we are rehearsing song or reciting song lyrics on a recurring basis, the word still can be hurtful, because all my son may know, and all, I think he's the general kid, I don't think he's unique in this way, is that this is a bad word. This is a bad word that has a bad history. This word has been used to demean, or might be to alienate a particular group. And generally speaking, you might hear it in other settings, but this is what the purpose of it primarily is. That's, I think, a reasonable facsimile of what most kids understand it to be. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. So when that word is then said, I don't think that they have the ability necessarily to parse, was it being used to hurt them? Because if you are the only person in a particular, if you are the only black kid on a team, or the only, or a very small representative group of a minority in an environment, and that word is being bandied about, it doesn't feel like it is used to, it may not have been meant to hurt you, but it may feel differently than what was intended.
Agreed. Agreed.
So in that instance, when I look at it and I think about kind of the impacts of the way in which we use the word, I'm moving conversation a little bit, in which we use the word, and we use the word, we use it in jokes, we use it in songs, we use it as a pronoun, we use it as a noun, it is an adverb, we use it the same way we use John. It is ubiquitous, right? But we know when we get mad, that word is still shot out as an invective to hurt somebody else. And so you know that if I say it to you, the way in which I say it may be used to hurt you.
Correct.
Absolutely. I can say it right now 15 different ways, and you'd be like, I know which each one of those ways mean. Fair.
Understood.
So when I hear words like this being used, and when I think about the way it's used, and then I think about what do we attribute it to, because I don't see any of these words. It's got the greatest marketing ever. I've never heard, and not that I want it, but I find it strange that I've never heard Hispanic slurs being used in the same way. I've never heard Asian slurs being used the same way. I've never heard ethnic slurs relating to particular like Jewish or Middle Eastern communities used in a way to suggest that we are going to reclaim this word because it is ours and we're moving the ball. No, it is absolutely loathsome. It is abhorrent. We do not say those words in those communities. We are the only group that doesn't. We are the only group that tries to find some complexity in a word that is absolutely abhorrent. And for whatever reason, we are trying to acclaim it. And then we wonder why kids and certain other segments of our demographic have issues with each other or within themselves. So I asked the question about when do you think your kids are going to hear it the first time? Because invariably, the way we are going, they are going to hear it. And at some point in time, they are going to question both the context, the history, what it means, should they say it, how does it affect them, and all things in between.
Well, I think it for my daughter, it's going to happen in school, unfortunately, because even my wife observed one time when she was in the schoolyard, a child sort of like used it in a way that did have the negative, but again, it was two, black kids talk like hanging out, and but like he still used it in a forceful way, in regards to his friend, like it was still in a way to intimidate. You know what I'm saying? And it was like shocking for her to hear in a schoolyard, knowing that like how you used it was to elicit a reaction and put this person on edge or put them on alert. You know what I mean? And so it
Do
was
you find that strange, Sam? That's exactly my point.
right,
Because if the word didn't have power still or meant to hurt still, the way in which we are trying to reclaim the word, when that kid said something to the other child on the
right,
playground, right? They meant to hurt that kid.
right.
The same way that those kids on the school on the SEPTA bus shot at and said certain things. I'm sure that word was used because they saw them in the same inhumane, substandard human or not even human property, the way that word was originally defined. So I
Yeah,
bring
I
this
mean,
all.
I think yeah. So the overall value of life is you could contribute it to the fact that we use those words. So then, how can we value life? I mean, in terms of when you correlate it to the actual incident at the school, right? Or the bus. I'm sorry, the bus where
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you had sort of the shooting. And so I do understand the idea that in that moment you weren't valuing the person that you were targeting, and to and 8 people were hit, so to me there was a randomness that you were willing to accept in carrying out whatever your intention was. You accepted the risk of the fact that there is a group of people, and yet I'm going to begin doing what I'm doing, um, in spite of that, right? And so, overall, in terms of how you value the people that you are physically seeing, there's something already amiss. Um, and so I get that point. I do think that we generally just use words to hurt people. Like that is also true. So that word aside, I do think that how we interact with people as a whole, our intentions come out. And I think that word specifically is a word that can be armed. And your point is, being that that is true, why should it ever be a term of endearment?
Why?
Like why? What's when we say it's being reclaimed, like how does it add value to us in any way, shape, or form when it can always be spun?
Right.
So it's like to say, and then here's what's interesting, because then in our quote unquote reclaiming of a word that doesn't serve us, we then take offense when we hear it outside of from another group, even if they're attempting to use it in the same way to say, "Hey, we're trying to be part of your reclamation project."
But let me ask this question. Let me ask this question because this is the one that. And listen. I love Terror Squad. I love Big Pun. I love Fat Joe. I got Don Cartagena somewhere in the crib, right? All of that. I'm trying to understand, and it's no shock because I've heard what he's talked about. Like, and the same thing with Jennifer Lopez. Like, yo, I grew up around these people. Like, this is my culture. I never hear like there were Hispanics there, and I don't want you to say it to hurt someone. I don't want it to be a tit for tat. I'm just trying to understand how did that become the term in which we use so casually when there is such a deep seated resentment and hatred associated, ingrained, embedded as part of that word. It is fibrous to this country. I don't understand it. And then we wonder and then we question why these types of acts are perpetrated against ourselves. I do not understand because I've never heard Fat Joe, and I'm just saying I'm picking them because I know they've said that word. I know they are in pop culture. I know they've also been around Black and brown communities, so I'm picking on them not because of the but because I know that they've said it. I've heard them say it in music in other venues. It is not to criticize them. It's just for I don't understand that if that is the word that you choose to use because you have been in Black and brown communities because you feel comfortable in those environments because this is what the culture, whether it be hip hop, whether it be the life that you were living in the area of New York that you were at. There weren't Hispanic folks that were there. Why don't they say the word? Why don't they say their own word? I don't want to suggest a word, but I'm sure there are words out there, right? Why isn't that one said everywhere? Why isn't that one said in every, like, I don't know, Pitbull or Daddy Yankee song?
Oh, well, see, to me, I hear what you're saying. I'm also one who believes that part of what we see in pop culture is absolutely by design. It's not an accident what gets promoted and what doesn't get promoted. And I think that the tearing down of the image of our culture is part of the design. Quite frankly, I mean, it's what gets funded. It's the videos that get funded. It's the music that gets all the backing. All the messages are very stereotypical. And what's really fascinating is that unfortunately we've moved into a space of social media where we can choose on our own, where we're not tethered the same way to having to adhere to what the man wants to promote, right? Like there was always this conversation about in Black media, well, we don't really get a chance to tell our story. It's like these are the only roles we get. That's why we have to take these positions. Da, 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 da. It's like one, there's always a choice. Number one, there's always a choice. But number two, that's not where we are anymore. Social media still, for some reasons, the biggest followings are the ones that have the most ratchet information. The most ratchet accounts still get the most views. So we are making choices, and this is not. And maybe the algorithm does contribute to it. I'm not saying it doesn't. With that said, we're not seeking anything other than this. We're still allowing ourselves to let the algorithm dictate what we see. We're not yearning or desiring to seek out content like this. That is more that has different nuance in terms of just life and life application. Like it's out there. We're not searching for it. We're not tuning onto that channel. So I think there is a correlation in terms of the the overall image, culture, depiction, what is promoted, broadcast. Not only is it still part, I think, of an overall agenda, but I think we are willing participants in it. And we have to recognize that it's not all on someone else to correct the things that we are choosing not to correct ourselves.
I I I hate the idea that we are funding or we are slowly capitulating in our own self-sabotage
Hmm.
because that's what you just described. That no other like it's like I don't want to subscribe to, and I don't disagree with what you're saying necessarily. I don't want to subscribe to the idea that no other agenda is out for any other race or ethnic group. I can see what your point is.
I,
I don't necessarily.
I didn't say there
Huh?
was no. I didn't. I wasn't trying to imply there was no other agenda. I
Hmm.
was saying that I was just speaking to the one agenda specific to this, to us, in terms
Okay,
of
fair,
that.
Fair. And as I look at this specific thing, the reason why I brought this all up and the reason why I asked about your children, and I'm not your children just because of the youth,
Sure.
but not certainly not speaking on your kids, is because I think about it in the context of whenever I hear the conversation about our relationship to the word, it is always as a grown man to another grown man or to a high functioning individual, supposedly, who has the ability to parse whatever nuance is said in the tone and the environment and the manner in which it was said. Right. But what does that do? What impact does that have on a child who legally can't even go give their own opinion in court yet? Right? Legally, they can't say, I love my mom and dad. I don't want to go stay with my dad because his house is as nice as my mom. You can't even say that in court until you're 12, 13 years old in some states. But we're not even thinking if the court is determined they're not rational to give that opinion on their own parents. We are saying that they are capable of hearing that word and divining whether or not, you know what, they're talking about me. They see me in this way. I'm not that person. I'm not, they don't mean to hurt me. Like, what? Of course they're not. What kind of effect does it have long term on the way they see themselves or see other people?
I'm missing. I missed the connection. Who
I'm
is
saying that the court in certain instances, the court has made decisions or studies have shown basically that at a certain age you are developmentally capable of making certain determinations.
correct? My question is, who is determining that it's age appropriate?
I'm not saying that anyone's determining. I'm saying that the frequency with which we say it, the exposure almost indiscriminately, where it's in TV, in the media, on social media, on whatever device that you can just access, that we say it in such a way that it has almost become like, I would expect if you've not heard about 10 years old, why not? Right? Like, you're late, bro. Like, why are we doing that to our kids?
I hear you. Listen, I, bro, I shudder to think of the clip of those children dancing to one of those Sexy Red songs, and it's like they're in like a nursery. I feel like it was like a daycare that went viral because they showed the children, but you realize like all of this stuff is learned at home. It's like, and th- they had either was a clown. I don't even know how. I don't even know how that song is played in that kind of facility. But like all the children were like in it. And so it's like meet the parents, man. It's for whatever reason it's permissible at home. And to your point, because of the development of a child to be in like it's part of the social programming where, to your point, this word that only has this effect on this community is permissible everywhere. And so now I'm trying to understand and rationalize why sometimes I feel triggered when I hear it and why sometimes it's supposed to be cool to say, right?
Right.
And that we are into, it's like there is the developmental years, and of course they're not all. I was gonna say it's like they're not always gonna be right, but it's like what is right. I think that's the point that we're coming to. It's like there is no right scenario.
There's no right
And
scenario.
that's why it's like this really should be abandoned, but it's not going to be abandoned, unfortunately. I think it speaks to larger issues around how I was watching a show recently, and they were talking about interracial relationships and some of the components to that. And one of the participants was talking about interracial dating relating to cultural, right? And she was saying, my background is one of a Caribbean background, and so even
Mhm.
marrying an American man, even though he is black, like culturally, there's differences. And so it's like you don't even like when we think about what interracial difference or interracial relationships, I think the cultural scenarios are sometimes just as pressing in terms of the differences of people. Um, but within that, uh, she was referring to like how there are certain core beliefs that she was raised with coming out of a Caribbean household, and she was making a note to say that at times she feels like there's an absence of those kinds of core components that derive from sort of like the African American community as a whole, right? And so like that was the point that she was making. And so we even think about like what are the guardrails in our community around certain things. They don't exist. It's like we don't police each other on anything. Like staying on code, like the way we stay on code is so backwards. It's like staying on code is those who do the worst to us get a pass sometimes. Like in other communities, there is a strong code around like those who do wrong against the community. It's like they're held in front of the congregation. Like we can't allow this to happen because as a community, there's diminishing returns. But in our community, it's sometimes we defer to whoever's I don't know. Sometimes we defer in a way that's not advantageous, and we all agree that this is what we should be doing.
I want to say two things, and I don't want to forget the point you just made about we forgive the people who hurt us the most. But the part you just said, the first part I want to address is with respect to the difference in. I've had conversations, I've had thoughts about this. The difference between other race or ethnic groups coming to this country and trying to see or identify closely to, but not necessarily the same as the African American experience. Even soldiers can serve for a certain period of time. Pilots can't fly multiple flights in a row. Police officers have shifts. At some point in time, I thought about this in the context of my grandfather served in multiple wars. My father, who is a very fair-skinned man, he has had all kinds of things happen to him in both business and in life. I have had things happen to me personally. And in some way, because of their experience, right, wrong, or other, I have inherited because of the length of their experience in which they have had in this country under that kind of situation. I'm not trying to suggest this country is racist. I'm not trying to suggest this country is irredeemable. What I'm suggesting is that they've had very real experiences. And out of those very real experiences, certain information has been shared to me about make sure you speak to the police where you are clear-minded, where you have your information ready. Make sure that you are respectful with authority. Why? Why do I need to do those things? Right? The difference is that the reason why I bring up the pilots, the police officers, the soldiers is because at some point in time, you become fatigued with always being alert or on the ready about things that may happen to you, about situations real or imagined, about whether you are actually living like the get out paranoia or it's an actual thing, because you are having to constantly evaluate your place or whether the situation that has befallen you is actually a real thing based on the actual content of your character or the color of your skin. And that duplicitous nature of all of it is really hard to kind of bear when this has been what you've inherited, which you've often adopted and has become ingrained to you because of generations that have lived this experiences. So for new folks, not for folks who, I'm not trying to suggest that they haven't had things happen to them, but if you have had a different experience coming to this country where you are showing up and you are a first generation, you may not have had a whole lot of stories about the Edmund Pettis. You may not have had experiences about, let's keep it local, Frank Rizzo, right? You may not have had experiences about South Philly, right? Just those kind, or go out Frankfurt. Not to throw shade at any of those places, but those are places that we all know things have happened, right? You may not be aware of those things. That's one. So I want to talk about that. But the other thing, which is a completely different conversation, which I'm so glad you brought, because I don't want to get too ingrained in all of this. This what you just said about why we always forgive the people who are worse to us is exactly why I hated Black Panther 2. That movie was trash. I was mad it was trash. I was excited. I was Wakanda forever and all that. Black Panther 2 was trash. The fact that, first of all, they didn't recast T'Challa. The second idea that you had Shuri, who was getting her whole society mopped by the brothers from the sea or whatever it is, and all of a sudden she wants to shake hands and be cool when these N-words was literally getting washed ashore. Bro, I was mad. I'd have killed everybody. Black Panther 2, we supposed to win. And you out here getting beat like this? Come on, man. I was mad about it.
I was mad with the whole Black Panther 2 piece because, one, T'Challa, like, I don't know why he wasn't, like,
Recast?
correct. It doesn't make sense. It's like it was the person, not the actor, not the character. I don't get what's happening here. I don't understand why they're taking the real person and inserting his death into a movie. what in the world? We're talking about Black Panther,
Listen,
the Marvel character. Why are we not recasting the character to create part 2?
Christopher Reeves fell off a horse in my childhood, right?
Like, what's going on? What is
Christopher
happening
Reeves
here?
fell off a horse.
So
let me tell you what they didn't stop doing. They ain't stop making no Superman movies.
Yo, let me
You know what I mean? Listen,
this was bad. That, in my opinion, yes, they did leave room for someone else, probably the other big bull, to become the guy moving forward. I get that. I don't like how they transition. I thought it was not necessary. You could have honored T'Challa, because here's the other thing about Black Panther. It wasn't always one person anyway. Like, it wasn't always T'Challa. He wasn't the only Black Panther.
right?
So you've already, there's ways of writing in the next person who was Black Panther.
We are literally pulling Spider-Man from other multiverses. I'm sorry, I didn't get all nerdy about this.
Because here's the problem. It's like the first time we had a male Black superhero. And in the second version of the movie, that whole, it's gone. The image is gone.
That's why I want to reconcile what we're talking about, what we're processing, right? Because the use of the word and how hurtful and opprobrious it is, the idea that word has the stigma and the connotation associated with it, and then the idea that juxtapose that with, we've got this superhero who is the king / warrior of the most advanced society in the nation. That brother couldn't even live, right? We couldn't have that ideal. The ideal that continues is that, and I'm not suggesting that there was some nefarious plot. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Marvel is in with the Illuminati. I don't know, right? But the whole idea that I'm looking at my sons and my kids' friends who are having to have these real conversations about perception and the way you are not that, or the way it wasn't meant in this way. Or, oh, I know he said it, but they didn't mean it like this. So how do you fit and feel in all of that situation? And the one thing that I could point to and say without peer that this was absolutely impeccable, they chose to insert feelings, not an ideal, into a situation in which it could have been upheld as some beacon for all of these young men to counteract the SEPTA shootings, to counteract what we hear and see in the sexy reds or whatever it is. King, warrior, highest society. Why not?
Brilliant scientist. I mean, like, he checks every box. There's a lot. I mean, listen, see, now I'm about to, all right, we need to break down, we need to have a segment, a show or whatever about Black Panther, because even in the first one, there's certain things that I kind of thought were unfortunate in terms of how the depiction of his character. There was one component of who he was that I felt like, man, they missed the mark here, and they really should have allowed him to also have this part of his true character, and it's relating to, honestly, his queen. It's like, somebody like that shouldn't be begging for a queen, in my opinion. It's like, show me the other guy who doesn't have women falling over themselves to try to get at him. Like, why is he the guy who's like what's going on here? Like, I don't understand a person who doesn't seem to be interested, and he can't, like, that's how the movie started.
So what's funny you say that, because I can see how that could be
at the very beginning, and it's just like, and I mean, even to the point where you go on listen, even to the point in the second movie, his son is not even connected to the lineage of the lineage of the power of his birthright.
Right.
He's in Haiti. So it's like, how is
before you go too far, because I could see how that could be used as a potentially, like, wait a minute, that's a sexist statement. I look at a character like James Bond, right? And James Bond is a drunk dude who was an employee for a spy agency that got blown up. That's where we last saw him at, right? He never had a question about getting women. Never had to say anything that was remotely romantic or whatever. He just was like, you're coming with me, let's get drinks, let's do this. That's it. This brother has a whole kingdom. We got literal spaceships.
He got technology, son. He got spaceships, son.
He got spaceships, bro. Come on, man. Come on. You got suits. We got spaceships. I got suits indeed, dog. So I don't know, man. Like I don't want to
That's the only
belabor it.
love interest that exists. That's like, come on, man, really?
Listen,
Like, no, because it's like show the guy. I mean, I'm just saying, all of it matters though, because we're talking about like our young men and what they can aspire to. And all I'm suggesting is that a person if these because think about it again, we're going down this path, but to me, it was so unsettling to learn that there is a son of T'Challa that is living outside of the kingdom. I don't like, how is this the move?
We are going to talk about this. Wait,
Yo, we got
we'll
to.
have to have a full Black Panther breakdown at some point. I'll get a dashiki on or whatever. We can do that. But I just want to raise the point and to kind of put a bow on what my issue was. I don't know. It resonated in a way with me about having to have the conversation, and I've had it before. It's just that I find it reckless and I find it haphazard and entirely too casual with the way in which we protect our minds and our young people, and then are in turn critical of both of those things when we exhibit behaviors that are detrimental to us as a culture.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. And so the way that word is used, the way we give license either through music or social media to others who should not say the word, not that anyone should say the word, but if it's a relational thing, then think about the way that relationship is developing people who are not as complex as you and I may be at this point.
Agreed.
What are they walking into? Because the reality, Sam, and I'll stop right here. The reality of it is, and I can keep going, but I'm gonna stop right here. The reality of it is that my father is 4 years old, right? If anyone said that word when he was when he was a 20-year-old person, it was on site, basically. Right? There were probably not that many people who were saying it socially, not the way in which we see it now. Okay. So we are really the first generation that's given license to be like, go ahead and say it, it's cool. You part of the club, it's whatever. So we don't know the impact what's going to have on our young people. We don't know the impact it's going to have on their growth and development.
You think we are the first generation that gave it license?
Well, what I'm saying is this, is that our parents certainly did not teach. I don't think my parents, I'll say this, my parents did not grow up in an environment where it was said everywhere, all the time, about everything in any kind of way. I don't think they grew up.
Parents who are 50. Like what generation do you classify as?
I would say your generations are between 20 and 30 years apart.
No, what generation do you classify as?
What am I? I think we're in the tail end of millennial/Z.
No, we would be. So I would say we're tail end of X, beginning millennials. I feel like millennials.
Oh, okay, maybe I'm wrong.
So like we are like technically it's like Generation X either ends in 1980 or 79, right? And so it's like you and I always try to identify with Generation X because we had the older siblings. So it's like that's the household we lived in. We weren't the oldest, the youngest by far. But we're so we're kind of the millennial. But like I think that even the Generation Xers, they were a big contributor in terms of the normalization of the word. So I agree that our parents being part of the silent generation, that was not, my dad was born in, beginning of during World War II. So, I agree with you there. And granted, being an immigrant as well, and so his whole scenario. So you talked about that before in terms of, when we think about culture and you're talking about the circumstances that African Americans have endured here, which is different from persons, even if they are of African descent, just growing up abroad. There's elements of their reality that they don't understand because they did not experience the same things. And so, man, I say all that to say, gosh, I lost my train of thought.
But I think the point you were going towards is about the way in which silent generation, passing it down, how it's been received.
Yeah, so it's like when it was really normalized. So it's like a part of me. It's like if we're kind of the millennial generation, I think it was before us. I think it was like the aunts or older siblings, or that really created more of the infusion of the word in our culture. And I think we are part of the byproduct of it. where our generation has accepted the fact that it is normal and didn't push back. And I definitely don't think Generation Z. I think Generation Z is going to be interesting. I think Generation Z is going to be
Is that just so I'm on my chronology? Is that the one after us?
That's the one after us. That's the
Okay.
one after millennials, yes. And then I
Yeah.
think like another one that exists today.
Well, if it is adopted universally, then I shudder to think about kind of the development and growth of where they're going to be.
Right.
Because I do think that it's almost like Sam. I know I keep saying like we got to wrap this conversation up, and I apologize, but like, dog, not everybody got tattoos. Not everybody got plastic surgery and BBLs. Like, yo, what is it going to look like in 20 years? Right? What is the effect of a BBL in 20 years? We will find out, right? Because there weren't BBLs in generation whatever we are, right? There were bad breast surgeries, and we knew that people was getting leaks and getting sick and take them out and this, that, and the other, and technology improved, but there were bad things that happened. What is the bad thing that's going to happen to a generation where all of they've heard or had to combat was thinking around the use of that term? That matters.
It does. I just wonder if I just believe that it's possible you and I, our experience, we might have been outliers in terms of a home life that didn't include the normalization of that word. Because I can think of friends my age, a little bit older, where like that was absolutely part of their home life, and their parents are our age. Their parents are our parents' age. So
But you know what though? I think the other part of it though, Sam, is that we went to Cheltenham or what have you. You went to Cheltenham for various times or what have you. I think growing up in a community trying to to separate all of that.
But think about hip hop, right? So like hip hop in the '80s, the word wasn't as infused in the lyrics, but in the '90s, it absolutely was.
Yep.
So to me, we grew up. To me, that's part of the normalization of it from a standpoint where we can't rap. Listen, I remember getting in trouble because I played a song in Mr. Stam's class when you could bring your own music, and it was a Tribe Called Quest. It was when they came out with the Love Movement album in our senior year, and I didn't know, well, there's the word is in there, right? And it came up, and so we had to stop the song, and it was just like, oh, I thought it was clean, but that was there. In my mind, this is a good, clean song, but that was in there, right? And so, again, case in point, where it's just like it was part of a culture that was normalizing, even in a song that was supposed to be a beautiful, flowy, happy-go-lucky, and I thought I could play it in class because we were all supposed to make sure it was screened, and there it goes, and so
I'll give you a different class story. I was I think I had Mr. Sexton in 10th grade, and he was fantastic. And we were reading, I want to say Huckleberry Finn, in which that word is littered throughout. And we were reading it as a class out loud. And I remember being very uncomfortable with some of our classmates who was throwing that term around. Like they were saying it with a little extra ER on the end of it. And I was like, yo, we're going to do something about this. And I remember leaving that class. I walked out of that class. And so I don't know that they meant to hurt. I don't know, because I don't remember afterwards having like any contentious moments or like long-term beefs with nobody. But I knew how that word made me feel. And so while it was around me, listen, I listened to every single song and every single rapper that you did too. But like, I just don't have the time or the energy to try to address and try to interpret. And what does that do for my mental space? We're talking about police officers have shifts, soldiers go home from war. If I'm sitting there trying to just ascertain your intent every single time you say it, and then wonder what you're saying or how you feel about me, and then wonder if I got the job because of this. Did I get this opportunity because of that? Did I not get picked because of this? I just don't have that energy. And what does that do for you? And how does that affect you? I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
My only point is that I think it started then. Because then if you think about the movies, Boys in the Hood, Don't Be a Menace. I mean, you name it, all of those classic movies from our generation, it's like that was the language, get a little bit older. I mean, so to me, I'm just saying, if I'm really thinking about a point in history where it's like, wow, it seems as if you couldn't escape the word. I feel like coming up in the 90s, that was part of my normal existence.
The door was open.
I don't recall it in the 80s the same way.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. I think your timeline is probably accurate. I think that we need to, as a community,
Who got a documentary on Freaknik? Things change in the 90s, yo.
Yeah, I watched it. We can talk about that next week. I watched it.
I'm sorry. Well,
yeah,
folks,
those N-words were crazy. So.
They were crazy.
Those N-words were crazy. Yeah.
Folks, I'm glad you stayed up for us to join us for another episode of Processing. As always, please make sure you like to help the algorithm. If there's any topic of interest that you would like us to talk about, just shoot us a comment. Let us know. We're willing to tackle anything. And again, if you want to join us, all we ask is that you cam up. We would love to have you as part of the program, as they say in the Midwest. And so, again, until next time, Malik, anything else for you, my brother?
You N-words have a good night.
Take care. And we might have missed. I'm sorry, we might have missed one here. Okay, hold on. We did have one comment.
I was saying that our children are Gen Alpha.
Gen Alpha. Okay, yeah, that's the new generation that exists. The Alphas. So what does that mean? Next generation is Beta? Is that how Gamma?
Generation broke. That's what they're gonna do. So you can't act right, can't speak.
The repair. What are you going to call the next generation? Because they're going to be called holding the bag, man.
Therapy. That's what
Yeah. Well, until next time, folks. Peace.
You got